music power.
With the release of Pro Skater 4 in 2002, the Tony Hawk series saw a shift in format with a greater emphasis on story, the story of a skater turned pro. Of course, this was a concept quickly run deep into the ground the coming years, but at the time at least, Tony Hawk's Underground and Underground 2 were both prime examples of why many, such as myself, can't get enough of this series. But that was on console, and today we're taking a look at these versions of the games. So let's jump into the first Underground title on Game Boy Advance and see how it compares with what I'd have to call the best Tony Hawk game. Reaching the main menu, everything is looking good so far, and sounding good, with Jurassic 5's A Day at the Races playing. Holy shit. Of course, it's only the 15-second intro on loop, but it's still awesome to hear a real song in one of these games. We start off by creating our skater, which has definitely improved since the portable Pro Skater games. We can even customize our own skate deck as well, which is... wow. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really terrible, but still amazing to see. Our character has played so many Tony Hawk games growing up that we've now decided to pick up a skateboard and give it a go. I was honestly never the biggest fan of fourth wall breaks, but at the same time, it's an incredibly realistic, believable motive to kickstart the events of this game. I know I picked up my first skateboard after playing Underground. We start off in Jersey, of course, learning how to play the game. The general presentation again is a step above what we've already seen from previous titles, with similar graphics and original music tracks, but it's the goal structure, basic dialogue, and explanation of what's going on here that really adds to the game overall. Each course is split into sections that you need to unlock by completing missions before you're allowed to skate there. But don't worry, because you can still check them out on foot in the meantime. Yes, you can even get off your board and run around. I will never not be shocked at how accurately Vicarious Visions have ported all of these games, not missing a beat on any of the major additions that defined each new title. Of course, the running here doesn't serve much, if any purpose at all, but it's still so cool to see. In an unexpected turn of events, however, the narrative begins to steer far away from the actual Underground game and write its own story across a variety of new locations. The general structure sees us unlock a new level, complete some objectives, unlock a second level and do the same there, then go back to the previous area for a competition before moving on and repeating the cycle. It's got a decent flow to it, constantly moving through the various goals, earning some cash and even unlocking some classic Pro Skater levels along the way. A lot of the new areas, unfortunately, aren't all that interesting to skate through, with some poor layout decisions and an incredible lack of decent combo lines to hit, making score-oriented goals somewhat tedious, but not unbearable. But I've got some mixed feelings brewing with this game. There is just something about it that doesn't sit right with me. Underground tried to introduce some level of realism to the franchise with less arcade-style objectives and a somewhat down-to-earth story mode. But the Game Boy Advance version takes this a step further with the implementation of some RPG elements. Yes, we're currently playing a Tony Hawk RPG. As you can see, we've got a clock at the top of our screen with a true day and night cycle, something the console version advertised and only half-assedly delivered, I might add, though all this clock actually is a convoluted mission timer. We also have a currency system where we can earn cash from completing missions to spend on entering competitions within the story, new skate decks, helmets and safety pads. But we can also buy candy bars and energy drinks. Why would I buy this stuff? None of it seems to do anything because you can get through the game perfectly fine without any of it. Well, that's what I thought. See, this game gets incredibly difficult. Maybe not as hard as Pro Skater 3 on Game Boy Color, but certain missions can still be brutal death spikes if you're not prepared. You need to constantly grind to level up your stats, and even then, you still might not be able to complete some of these. But what's worse is that sometimes you hit the ground with such impactful force that you get reset back to the starting point, automatically failing whatever objective you're trying to complete. That really sucks, and it's also incredibly inconsistent as well. Like, I can slam from the top of a building and be fine, but if I stub my toe on a ledge, then bang, rest in pieces. It reminds me of the big drop mechanic, which was also a pain in my ass. Was a pain in my ass. I have learned that you can actually land big drops by simply holding the jump button as you land. Thank you to the hundreds of people who corrected me on that last year. I'm sorry, I never owned a manual for Pro Skater 2, so I never knew that. I'm sorry I ranted and raved about it for 2 full episodes in last year's special. You can stop telling me now. Regardless, the big drop mechanic is still not good because it's including a level of realism that actually takes away from the fun gameplay, which is why it was removed. So it's weird seeing a variation of it here in Underground. Towards the end of the game, it actually got so bad that I got stuck doing 3 rounds of the same competition over and over and fucking over again. It wasn't until after eventually completing it and reaching Slam City Jam, the final competition, that I discovered those helmets, pads and candy bars actually do have a purpose. These 2 meters here represent your health and protection. So it's like fucking Grand Theft Auto, where we need a bulletproof vest just to skate through the Bronx. By purchasing new protection and refilling your health this way, you can survive a lot longer skating around, taking big slams. I must admit, it's nice not to be coma-induced every time I fall over myself, but in my opinion, much like the big drop, this is a level of realism too far. It just doesn't need to be here. I don't have a manual for this game either, but I also don't recall this crucial detail ever being mentioned within the game itself, though I could be wrong on that. But if you don't know about this, then it makes shit a lot more frustrating than it needs to be. And even if you do know about it, then it's just a chore on your to-do list that doesn't feel rewarding to maintain. Even with the extra padding, this final competition is unfathomably challenging due to the poor level structure. But lucky for me, bronze is all you need to beat the game. Each location also has a list of classic Pro Skater goals to complete as well, which is good, but not great, simply due to the weaker locations on offer here. In the end, I'd have to say that this game is still decent for all of the same reasons as the Pro Skater titles on this system. It just lacks the quality level structure I expect from Underground, and with the addition of these unnecessary RPG elements, seals this game's fate. Tony Hawk's Underground on GBA gets 5 out of 10. Now, I know you're all salivating, just waiting in excitement to hear about REMIX on the PSP, but you'll have to be patient for a little longer, because we still have unfinished business on the Advance with Underground 2. Let's see if Vicarious Visions can take this series back into a positive direction. Everything begins much the same as Underground 1, with us creating our skater. But what the fuck happened here? What is with these character models? Everyone has big heads, big feet, and alien hands like some mangled tech deck monstrosities. But also, our options in Creator Skater are so limited, the selection is terrible, plain and simple. Launching into the first level, the Ramones Rock and Roll High School starts playing, and yeah, now we're back on track. This is the first portable Tony Hawk game to feature a fully licensed soundtrack, which is pretty rad, I'm gonna be honest. Once again, our objective here is to go through each area accepting goals from NPCs, like this little kid here. Wee Man? Oh god, what have they done to you? He's like an infant. I thought they stopped doing vertically challenged characters after the little person in PS1's Pro Skater 4. And not to mention, he wants us to collect the combo letters because somebody's placed them up out of his reach. They're in the gutter! Piss ants can reach them! You're not that fucking short, mate. Objectives are your standard stuff, doing tricks, collecting items, you know how it goes. Of course, Vicarious Visions have worked to painstaking detail, adding graffiti tags into the gameplay. These are essentially scavenger hunt missions, and we also have focus mode to slow the game down while we're working at high scores. Not that you need it though, because this game already chugs like crazy. Thug 2 runs so inconsistently, which is bullshit because every single Game Boy title before it has had no issues. And it's not like there is a lot going on here, the game just seems to be constantly overloaded. It's also at this point, after only 5 minutes of playtime, that the soundtrack is just making all of this so much more unbearable. Yes, it is nice to have some familiar tunes to help sell the illusion that this is Underground 2, but every track is only a brief loop that are all so crushed to shit, it's like bleeding cancer in your ears. Eventually you unlock a pro challenge within the level that needs to be completed with multiple characters, and once it's done, you advance to the next stage. There really is nothing else to it. We still get the cutscenes and text messages that explain some of the story, but otherwise, it's just the same thing as last time. Simple with a good pace. But what is this turret shit? Yeah, we've got a few special mini-games to complete along the way. Starting off with graffiti tags, which are like really shitty rhythm games. I mean, look at it. It makes Crash Bandicoot Dance Party look like fucking Guitar Hero. Then we've got these manual QuickTime events, which are a little better, but nothing to write home about. And finally, of course, we've got these malnourished, lifeless, boring turret segments. This bastard pops up numerous times throughout the campaign and is always the same background with the same set of character models moving at the same slow speed, sometimes for upwards of 10 fucking rounds. And hell, if you still haven't gotten your fix, then you can go and replay all of these mini-games in the never-ending mode. It's actually a quick and easy way to unlock a bunch of cheats, which actually make this game somewhat tolerable. I'm sorry, but this is pathetic, a major step backwards. Honestly, the general skating gameplay is still fun and works okay, but then it doesn't really work okay at all. The game runs like a legless dog lagging, missions get repetitive quickly, which complements the painful soundtrack, and the classic goals aren't too bad, but that's about it. Underground 2 on GBA gets 3 out of 10. If there is one thing it gets right, it's the theming. We've got shopping carts, silly goals, and a jackass cast across all of the same levels we saw in the real game, if slightly altered. But unfortunately, that's not enough to save it. Which brings us to the main event, feature presentation of today's episode. Tony Hawk's Underground 2 REMIX. A re-release, port, and in many ways a director's cut for the PlayStation Portable. I've waited patiently to play this game for so many years now that I honestly can't believe that the time has finally come. Let's check it out. Released roughly midway between Thug 2 and American Wasteland in 2005, Sharba Games were responsible for this one. Given the good work they did with Pro Skater 3 on 5th gen, and the terrible job with Project 8 on 6th gen, I'm a little anxious to be honest. But with the PSP's powerhouse hardware on board, what we've got here is what you can expect. It's fucking Underground 2 as we all know it. The awesome creation suite is here with skaters, graphics, goals and tricks. No custom parks, which is a shame, but who needs it when REMIX introduces 4 brand new exclusive levels on top of the already stacked level list. The story mode is the same as last time, only now we start off in Santa Cruz, which you may recall featured in the classic mode for American Wasteland. I'm sure for those of you who are familiar with this title, it's like big whoop who cares, but for me personally, it is so fucking cool finally getting to play the original version of this map. New skaters are the surfer dude and some hippie stoner, but even cooler, this game's theme of destruction manifests itself here with a big tropical storm opening up the boardwalk area. Awesome. And it's like this for each of the new levels, with new destruction elements changing the landscape and many new characters being introduced, only ever seen in this game. I must admit though, trying to play this with a much more advanced control scheme is really giving my muscle memory a run for its money. I've played so many of these games on Game Boy systems that have 4 or less buttons, so I'm sucking at this pretty bad. Sorry about that. The control is let down somewhat with being on the PSP. The D-pad moves you and the analog stick moves the camera, but when you switch to walking, the stick now makes you run and the D-pad makes you walk slowly. So you need to switch between them, which isn't ideal, but aside from that, the control is still incredibly competent and I'm loving playing this so far. It's really cool. With the addition of more levels, we get new cutscenes to fill in the gaps, but for some reason, the polish on these is almost non-existent. For starters, all of the audio is delayed by a couple of seconds, which really shits the OCD. All of the characters' eyes bug out of their heads too, which is fucking terrifying. But I think the most notable absence here is a lack of voice work. It seems only Bam returned to do some new lines, while everyone else either used repeated voice clips from other cutscenes, don't speak at all, or get voiced by a totally random dude.
Cut one loose.
Sink or swim.
Hey guys, check me out. I'm going big. Whoa! Oh, schnell! Ah!
Hey guys, check me out! I'm big in Japan!
What is that about? I really don't understand why these are so lacking. It really takes away from the game. But having said all that, this story mode is still better than the console version. Thanks to all of these extra levels being included, we get split paths to choose where we go next. That is so good. Not only does this add replay value, but it works well with the team narrative that meant nothing previously. If only they'd given you a choice for Team Tony or Team Bam and had 2 separate good and evil storylines. Now that is what this game always should have been. But I don't want to discredit what REMIX has tried to do here, because the addition of split paths and new levels, Santa Cruz, Kyoto, the casino and Atlanta, transforms the experience. This is the definitive version of Underground 2's story mode. I'm shocked. Yes, just playing such a strong, portable game for the series is a shock to my system when you look at the past few episodes, but I'm also shocked because why wasn't this on console? It's so weird to think that a portable game could ever be considered the superior, but here we are. Which is why it's such a shame that for all this game offers in added content, it lacks in overall polish. It feels like a director's cut, but if the director left the cutting to some random dude on the street, who then also did Phil Margera's extra voice lines. Still, I cannot deny this is a whopper title. With all of the additional content on top of what is already a jam-packed game with both story mode and classic mode, REMIX has the second largest level count of a Tony Hawk game with a total 19 levels, which is only beaten by 2X, which featured an astonishing 24 levels. All this extra stuff breathes some much needed life and design into the story mode, and best of all, it's portable. However, for all of that extra content, it also introduces a step down for presentation, meaning that these differences ultimately cancel each other out. So Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix gets 6 out of 10. At the end of the day, it is just the same game, so it has to get the same score, but despite that, I would have to claim that this is the definitive way to experience it. And that's the portable Underground games. The first title on GBA was an interesting experiment that didn't really work out, but was still fun to play. The less said about Underground 2 on GBA, the better, and REMIX was an amazing director's cut that outshines the primary console version. Now that we're finally starting to get into some stronger portable hardware, get keen to see American Skateland on the Nintendo DS in tomorrow's episode. But until then, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share. I'm Square Eye Jack, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.